Hello and welcome to this week's Bible in the News. For months now, rumours have been circulating that the British government was planning to scrap parts of the EU-UK withdrawal agreements, which it signed up to after the 2019 general election. This agreement is a legally binding agreement and was seen to be the foundation of the future UK-EU relationship after Britain's departure from the European Union. The government signed up to the agreement that placed a customs border between mainland Britain and Northern Ireland, which has angered the Unionist community in Northern Ireland. Brussels has warned against any departure from the agreement and said that it would be a declaration of a trade war if Britain were to make this step. Well, this week it happened. It was announced last Monday that the government was introducing legislation that would, quote, override aspects of the agreement, allowing goods to be transported from mainland UK to Northern Ireland without any of the checks that the UK agreed to in the protocol. This has prompted fury in the EU, with Brussels claiming that it is a breach of international law. Not only has the EU threatened legal action, they've taken it. EU Commission Vice President Marcos Sevaskov said that there was no legal or political justification whatsoever for unilaterally changing an international agreement, saying, "Let's call a spade, this is illegal." He added that the EU had no choice but to launch legal action. Philippe Lambert, a MEP in Brussels, said that the EU's patience had been tested, quote, to the extreme by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Commentators see a real risk now of a trade war between the EU and the UK as the political squabbles and court battles continue. But how have we come to this point? Theresa May, shortly after the 2016 EU referendum, gave a speech where she said, "Our vote to leave the European Union was no rejection of the values we share. The decision to leave the EU represents no desire to become more distant to you, our friends and neighbours. It was no attempt to do harm to the EU itself or to any of its remaining member states. We do not want to turn the clock back to the days when Europe was less peaceful, less secure, and less able to trade freely. It was a vote to restore, as we see it, our parliamentary democracy, national self-determination, and to become even more global and internationalist in action and in spirit." She said, "We will continue to be reliable partners, willing allies, and close friends. We want to buy your goods and services, sell you ours, trade with you as freely as possible, and work with one another to make sure we are all safer, more secure, and more prosperous through continued friendship. We are leaving the European Union. We are not leaving Europe. And that is why we seek a new and equal partnership between an independent, self-governing, global Britain and our friends and allies in the EU." Now, although these things may be in the hearts of men and women, we know that the Most High rules in the kingdoms of men. The UK government could work to continue sharing values with the EU. They could work to be close friends and allies with the EU. They could seek to remain part of Europe while leaving the European Union. But unless God wills these things, the plans of men will be frustrated. Ezekiel 38, referring to the time when the land of Israel will be attacked by Gog's host, which includes the states of the European Union, records that Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish with all the young lions thereof shall say unto thee, and this is Gog, Art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? And so what we see is the Tarshish power, which is Britain, will not only be standing apart from the European nations, will not only be outside the European Union's foreign policy, but it will be standing there accusing them of attacking the nation of Israel for monetary gain. This is not the language of people who share the same values as Theresa May wanted. This is not the language of close friends and allies. This is the language of rivals. Britain will be condemning the actions of its European neighbours, but powerless to stop them from taking the land of Israel. We also see that the prophet Ezekiel refers to the merchants or the traders of Tarshish. And this is particularly interesting when we hear of the potential for a trade war between the UK and the EU. Today, Britain exports over £250 billion worth of goods to the EU, which makes up 42% of all the UK's exports. The UK imports over £300 billion worth, making up half of all of the UK's imports. At the moment, the UK is one of the merchants of Tarshish. In fact, it is the biggest single trading partner with this country. But perhaps this is about to change. By the time we come to the Battle of Armageddon, the merchants of Tarshish will be the Gulf states and the Commonwealth, not the EU. The looming trade war between the UK and the EU will force the UK to extend its trade links with the other nations around the world and more permanently solidify the separation that we've already seen between the continent and the UK. And so as we see these things coming together, let us be reminded that our Father in heaven controls the events in this world. It is not for man to direct his steps. And so how sure can we be that not only does our God control the big things in this world, but he also controls the smaller things in our own lives. In him we live, we move, and have our very being. And so let us fear not the things which come upon this world, but lift up our heads in hope, knowing that our redemption draweth nigh. This has been Paul Barnes joining you for this week's Bible in the News.